Hello students, greetings of the day. This is Dr. M. Naglakshmi for the paper Research Methodology. Let us move on to the very important unit, that is reporting empirical research in literature studies. So we are going to learn how to report an empirical research study in literature. This means we are studying literature using methods like surveys, classroom activities, or reader responses. To make this easy to understand, I will explain each step with examples. So the step one is title. First, we write the title. So your title should include the literary text or theme. The next one is the research method. So, for example, student responses to symbolism in Robert Frost poetry, a classroom-based study. So this title clearly tells us what text is studied and who is involved and what method is used. So the first question, what text is studied? That is Robert Frost poetry. Who is involved? Students. What method is used? Reader response. Okay, so this is the first thing. The next one is abstract. Okay, this is the short summary of your entire study. Usually, abstract should be written at the end of the project. That is, after you complete your entire study, you understand what you have written, right? When you are writing abstract after completing the whole thing, it would be, it's like a review, the short summary, all right, for a whole thing, right? That is abstract. This is a short summary of your entire study. For example, for the same topic which we have taken the title, the student responses to symbolism in Robert Frost poetry, a classroom-based study. Okay, so this study explores how UG students or undergraduate students or PG students or postgraduate students interpret symbolism in select poems of Robert Frost. A survey method was used with 50 students. The findings show that most students relate symbolism to personal experiences. The study highlights the importance of reader response in literary understanding. So, in the title, we haven't given the students whether they are UG or PG, so that when I have explained, I have stated that undergraduate or postgraduate. So, if you are mentioning that postgraduate, you have to stick on to that. If you are mentioning undergraduate, you have to stick on to that. That should be proper thing maintained throughout your project. The next step is introduction. In the introduction, we explain the topic and research problem. First, start with poetry often uses symbolism to convey a deeper meanings. So you have to start like that in a general way, right? And then to add context. That is, Robert Frost poems are widely studied for their symbolic richness. So it is now landed into their chosen title, the specific. Then the research problem. However, students often interpret symbolism differently based on their experiences, right? That is the research problem. Then you put the research problem into research question. How do students interpret symbolism in cross poetry? So the research problem, that is the research objective, right? You can state as an objective, right? That objective should be reframed as question, research question. So, if you are stating research problem, it should be stated like that. Or if you are stating research objective to interpret symbolism, right? Students' experiences, based on students' experiences. Then, based on that research objective, you frame the research questions. that how do students interpret symbolism in prose poetry. This is your introduction part. You have to explain everything in detail. For the understanding, I am giving you like a skeleton work of the whole thing. Right. The next step is review of literature. Have already posted a video on review of literature. How you have to write review of literature. What are the main thing should be considered while preparing your review of literature, right? The steps involved, the five major steps involved, all those things discussed in a different video. So you should follow all those things while writing your review of literature here. Right. So we discussed previous studies. For example, you might have read a paper written by Smith in the year 2018, right? Talked about symbolism in poetry, right? How you are quoting here, double quote, Smith, bracket, 2018, because the year, that close the bracket, only for the year you are putting the brackets, states that symbolism in poetry enhances emotional engagement. You have to be very careful when you are taking somebody's ideas. You have to cite it properly to avoid plagiarism. Okay, always remember that you have to do incitation as well as the same thing should be included in your bibliography section. Right. I will give you one more example. Ravi in the year 2020. So what you have to do for 2020, you have to brackets found that students interpret poems based on personal context. Okay, so you are quoting all those researchers studies done previously to find your research gap. This one also we have discussed in the survey of literature in the previous lecture. So you should understand all those things, listening to that lecture and follow the steps, and then you have to do this one. So here, for a better understanding with the framework, I am giving these examples. Then identify a gap. So, however, very few studies focus on Indian undergraduate students. So far we have taken studies, previous projects, previous dissertations. They have done studies based on different set of students. Now we are going to focus on Indian undergraduate students. Even though there are studies have been conducted uh, taking Indian students, you can mention that students from Tamil Nadu. Even when you find that already studies have been done for Tamil Nadu students, you can further specify that particular city or particular university or college, right? To narrow down your gap, right? To specify your gap properly, right? This is your step number 4, review of literature. So from the review of literature, you found the research gap and you stated the research gap. The next thing is theoretical framework. So here we are going to explain the theory we are going to use. For example, this study is based on reader response theory. Initially, when I mentioned the title, I included all these three things, right? So here we are going to talk about the theoretical framework, that is the reader response theory. So according to this theory, meaning is created by the reader, not just the text. So you have to quote all those things from the authentic book, and you can also cite this here as well as in the bibliography. So you can mention that readers bring their own experiences to interpretation. That is what you have mentioned in the title itself, based on students' experiences, right? Symbolism can be understood based on their experiences. This is what reader response theory also meant. So this is the theoretical framework. The next one is methodology. So now we are going to explain how the study was conducted. For example, research design. So in the initial thing, that abstract, already we have stated that 50 students have been taken for the study. The study uses a qualitative survey method. You know that we have already seen in the previous lecture the differences between qualitative and quantitative research methods, right? So here we are using the qualitative survey methods, that is 50 undergraduate students from a college. So you should understand that quantitative, we use questionnaires, survey type thing. For qualitative, we take interviews or group discussion. That comes under qualitative research, right? So, the participants, 50 undergraduate students from a college, right? You have to mention that 50 undergraduate students from a college. Here, the college, you have to mention the name of the college. Then materials, two poems by Robert Frost, right? And a questionnaire. Okay, so if you are using only uh, the quantitative method uh, based on survey or questionnaire, then it should be quantitative method. If you are using questionnaire as well as uh, interviews and group discussion, then it is qualitative as well as quantitative, right? So now here procedure. Next one is procedure. Students read the poems and answer questions about meaning and symbolism. This thing can be like interview, or you can give the questionnaire. They can answer to the questions asked in the questionnaire, right? And then you collect things and analysis. Next part is data analysis. Responses were grouped into common themes, and then you have to do the analysis part. Okay, so this is your step 6, that is methodology part. Now, step 7, results and findings. So here we present what we found. For example, most students interpreted the road not taken as life choices. So how they interpret the poem, the road uh, in the poem, the road not taken as life choices. Okay, so based on the students' responses, you found this, uh, you know, what is that? You found this conclusion, right? Some students related it to personal decision. So out of 50, most of them, maybe probably 35, found road is life choices, and some students related it to personal choices, right? So you can also say that 70%, instead of stating that numbers, you can put it in percentage. 70% of students gave similar interpretations. So you are giving an overall, percentage of the findings which you have arrived at, right? And then the next step is discussion. So you analyzed the data you collected, right? And then you are going to discuss about the data which you have collected. So the what are the how do we mean the findings, right? The findings support reader response theory, as students created meanings based on personal experiences. So this shows that literary interpretation is not fixed. So we are coming to the conclusion, arriving at a conclusion that literary interpretation is not a fixed thing. It is based on individuals' experiences. This is what we, at the end of the thing, we arrived at. Right? That is in the discussion part. And the next one is conclusion. Right? Summarize your study. For example, This study shows that students interpret symbolism in different ways. It highlights the importance of interactive teaching methods. So you can also add future research can include more text or larger groups. So what you have to do while concluding your chapter, you have to summarize all those things. You give your findings. Based on the findings, you conclude, and then you have to give the limitations, what you have faced during your uh, research, and then you have to give further scope of the research, which means that how this research can be extended in future. That is what we are adding here. Future research can include more text or larger groups. Instead of taking one or two poems, you can take a number of poems of Robert Frost, or instead of taking 50 students, you can take 100, 200 students, right? This is the further scope of the research. And then the last part is references. List all sources used, right? The primary sources and secondary sources. Okay, that we have already seen in the bibliography lecture, that how you have to uh, put all those things there, whether you have used explicitly or consulted, all those things coming under in the session of bibliography to avoid plagiarism. So, and make sure you are following the methodology, that is MLA. You are following MLA edition. So, you make sure that your bibliography follow MLA style while you are citing all those things. Even in your incitation, you have to follow the same. Uh, when I mentioned that, I mentioned MLA style, right? So, the final thing is to conclude your empirical research in literature, or it helps you to understand how readers engage with the text in real life situation, right? So this is the way you have to write your study in an empirical way. Hope it will be useful. Thank you.